deploy two virtual machines onto that virtual network, and they configure them to allow one virtual machine to ping the other over that virtual network. So the first thing I need to do is to sign into the Azure portal at portal.azure.com. And then I can choose the Create Resource in the upper left-hand corner of the portal, and then select Networking, Virtual Network. This will take me to the Create Virtual Network pane, and it gives me the Basics tab, IP addresses, security, tags, review, and create. So for this one, I'm going to set my subscription that I want it to go onto, which we will go over later. And next I have to set up my resource group. I'm going to create a new resource group, and in this instance I'm going to name it VNet1 -RG1, and I can click create, or OK rather. Next, for the name of this virtual network, we're just going to call it VNet1. And for the region, I'm going to place this in the East US region since that is closest to me. And then I'm going to go to the next, the IP addresses. So for the IPv address range, I'm going to select 10.1.00/16, so 10.1.0.1, okay. And then I'm going to select, I don't need an IPv6 address space in here. And that should be it. I'm going to add a subnet to this one. So I'm going to call it subnet 1. And its address range is going to be 10.1.24. So it's 24. I think that's all I need for this one. I'm not going to enable any services. I have the right address space, the name, everything. I don't need to worry about security at this point. We'll work on that a little later, or putting tags on it. So I can go over to review and create, and I can see here that it's putting it into my Azure Pass sponsorship subscription. The resource group is going to be called VNet1-RG1. I'm calling the VNet1 in my East US region. The address space I'm putting it in is 10.1.0.0.16. I'll notice here it says no subnet, so I need to go back and double check thing because I have some information that's not valid. So I'm going to go back to my IP address range, and I have the 10.1. I need to add the subnet. I don't think I saved it earlier. Yeah, I didn't add it, so let me put that in there. Subnet 1. And it's going to take up a space of 10.1.0.0/24, and I'm going to click add. So there's a subnet that's supposed to be there. So now it should pass the review and create stage, running the final validation. So validation is passed. I can now create. So now I can see that my deployment is underway. So now I can see that the deployment is complete. I can double check the deployment by simply clicking the Go to Resource button. And it takes me over to the VNet1, that's the name of the virtual network I created. And I can see that it is up and it's in place. So the next thing will be to create my virtual machine, the first of the two that I'm going to create. So again, I'm going to go to the upper left side of the portal and select the Create a Resource button. I'm going to go down to Compute. I'm going to see if the virtual machine is there, so I don't see this. I'm looking for the Windows Server 2016 Data Center. It's not listed in my featured list here. I could click See All, and that's going to bring up all of the different virtual machines that are available, and I don't see it here. I do see Windows Server, so if I select that, I can then go in and click the drop down where it says select a software plan, and I'm going to look for the 2016 Data Center, Windows Server 2016 Data Center. I can select that and then click Create. So now I'm in the Create a Virtual Machine. It's going to create that Windows Server that I looked for, and I have some settings here. Again, I'm going to put it in my Azure Pass sponsorship subscription. I'm going to put it in the resource group that I created earlier, and that was VNet1 RG1. And now I need to give it a name. So for this one, I'm going to give it a name of VM1. I'm going to place this in the East US region because that's the closest one to me. As far as my image is concerned, it already has the Windows Server 2016. I need to leave the default because I don't have any infrastructure it needs, so I'm going to just leave infrastructure the way it is. I'm going to next put it under the size, which should be the default DS1V21. That should be fine enough. That has one virtual CPU with 3.5 gigs of memory. It costs about $91.98 based on my subscription per month. I need to set up a username. So for my username, I'm just going to call it Azure User. For the password, I'm going to use just a regular password here. So I could say capital and repeat it. So it looks like my passwords don't match. Let's see here. Let me just change the password. Alright, so I have matching passwords now. My public inbound port, I'm going to allow all selected ports. For its selected inbound port, my public are going to be allowed selected ports. My select inbound ports, I need to enable HTTP, HTTPS, and SSH along with RDP. Next, I got to go to disks. Under disks, I'm going to leave all the default values. I'm going to go to networking. So the default is VNet1. If you remember, that was the name of the VNet I created earlier. As far as the subnet is concerned, I'm going to leave the default to subnet1. Again, that's the subnet I created earlier. Public IP address, we're going to keep the one that it entered for me, the default, which is VM1 IP. For the NIC network security group, we're going to keep it at basic. And then select the allowed ports for public again. And again, I want to make sure that all the ports that I need open for the inbound ports are HTTP, HTTPS, SSH, and RDP. They're all together. So next I can go to management. Everything else I'm going to leave as the defaults. I'm going to go over to management next. And under management, I want to set up default of boot diagnostics. Also for diagnostic storage account, I'm going to accept the default here, which it's already set up for me. Then I'm going to go over to advanced. Nothing I need to do in advanced at this stage, so I'm going to leave the defaults. Same as with tags, there's nothing I need to do to set up any tags yet. We'll go over that in a later demonstration. And create. So it's going to go through, it's going to review my settings and make sure that these settings are validated. So running final validation. While it's running that, you can see here that it's already saying, hey, for this type of subscription or this type of virtual machine, it's going to cost me about 12.6 cents an hour. So you'll remember earlier it told me it was going to be about $91 an hour, a month rather. But this breaks down to $12, about 12 cents, 12.6 cents, 13 cents an hour, which is good. I can see my validation is passed, so I can select create. And now it's going to the process of initializing the deployment, and it's going to create my resource. So my deployment is complete now. If I look, I can notice that under deployment details, it shows me everything that was created. So it created my virtual machine, the network interfaces, a network security group, the public IP address, as well as a storage account in there. I can also go into the resource and take a look at it. So here I am in VM1 virtual machine. I can see it is running, and it is in my resource group that I selected earlier. So everything is set up, and I can already see that there's some CPU activity. It's done some networking and some consumed some disks as well. So that machine is ready. So now I got to set up my second virtual machine. So again, I'm going to go to Create Resource. I'm going to go down to Compute. But if you'll notice under Popular, this is my last thing I created here. So I can actually just skip all those other steps and go straight into the creation of the 2016 Windows Server. So for this one, I'm going to set up practically the same. I just have to change the name of it, but practically the same as what I did when I created the very first virtual machine. So for that machine, if I remember correctly, I did put it into my Azure Pass. I'm going to put it in my resource group that I've already created earlier, which would be the VNet1 RG1 resource group. The virtual machine name, I'm going to change it to VM2 in this instance. Again, I'm going to have it in the East US, although it doesn't matter because their networking is going to be set up so they'll be able to talk to each other, but I'm going to put it in the one that's closest to me. It too will be a DS1 V2 machine. For the username, I'm going to use the same one, Azure user, and put in my password. All right. And for my inbound ports, I want to allow selected ports. Also, I want to enable HTTP, HTTPS, and SSH rather. And I believe everything else is the same. So we're going to go over to the disks. Don't need to change anything with the disk. We're going to keep them the same. We're going to go to networking. Now for this one, I'm going to change the public IP to VM2 IP, which is the default right here. Also the diagnostic storage account, I want to leave it the same. So if I go under management, right, so diagnostic storage account, I'll leave it the same as the default here. There's nothing to change in advance, nor in tags. So I can go back to review and create. Let's do a quick review to make sure that it's valid and validation has passed. And again, I will do create. And you'll notice too that this pricing is the same, 0.1260 US dollars per hour. And now it's deploying that second VM. Now I can see here that the second VM has deployed. Again, if I look under deployment details, I'll see that it created a virtual machine, it created the network interfaces, the network security groups, and the public IP address. Again, I can check it if I go to resource. And I can see that the VM2 is running and it's in the East US. It's got its public IP address and it's working on the VNet1 subnet1 network. So that's all working really well. So now I need to go into my first machine. Remember, this is VM2. We did create a VM1 earlier. So if I expand this, I can go down to my resource groups. Let me collapse this so we have better real estate. And if I scroll down, it helps if I get into the right subscription. There's a VNet1 RG1. If I open that up, it'll show me all the resources that are in there. So for this one, I want to get into the VM1 virtual machine. Now I want to connect to that virtual machine. So if I go in here, I'll see here it is. It's running VM1. I can click the connect button and I want to RDP. So we're just going to remote desktop into that machine. Okay, and it gives me, I'm going to connect to it via the IP address on port 3389. So I can simply download that RDP file. I'm going to say open. I get the remote desktop warning. Yes, I do want to connect to it. Okay. And now it wants me to log in. Notice it has my name as the username, and that's not true. So I'm going to click on here and say use different account. And for that user, we call it Azure user. And I created a password for it. And I'm gonna click OK. All right, I get a warning. I'm just gonna say yes, I do want to connect to it. And now it's giving me the option to connect. So now it's coming in, it's logging into the network, or into this computer rather. And remember, this is a brand new virtual machine, so it's just starting up for the very first time. Okay, so now the VM1 server is up and running, so let's see if we can ping it. So I'm going to go down to the Windows icon here. There we go. So if I go to Windows PowerShell, right click on Windows PowerShell, click on More, and select Run as Administrator. So now I have Windows PowerShell. I'm going to try to ping VM2, P-I-N-G, VM2, and let's see what happens. So I can see here that the request timed out. This is an error message. It means it cannot talk to or ping VM2. We got that error because the ping uses the Internet Control Message Protocol, ICMP, and by default, ICMP is not allowed through the Windows firewall. So in order for us to allow the VM1 to ping VM2, we have to run a command that's going to allow ICMP through the Windows firewall. So let me type in that command, and that's going to be new-net firewall rule display name and it's going to be allow ICMPv4-N. So this is the rule that we're setting up, and we're going to use a protocol ICMPv4. Alright, so now it's enabled. We can see it's true. Now this is for the VM1. So now I have to connect to VM2. So let's just reduce this momentarily. And we're going to get into VM2 next. And again, I'm going to select this. And I'm going to go into More. And I want to run PowerShell as an administrator. And I'm going to try to run the command ping VM1. So I can see here I'm getting replies back. That means that I was able to ping VM1 virtual machine successfully. That is because ICMP has been configured to be allowed through the Windows firewall on the VM1 virtual machine, what we did in an earlier step. So now this ping is being done using the virtual network that we created and deployed the two virtual machines into. The two virtual machines are communicating over this virtual network that was created. Remember to remove any newly created resources that you no longer use. Removing unused resources ensures that you will not incur unexpected costs. Remove unused resources by deleting a resource group that the unused resources belong to. So keep in mind that with Azure, you're only getting charged for machines that you're using. So since we're done with this walkthrough, I'm just going to exit out of here and I'm going to close my remote desktop session. I'm also going to do that for number 1 as well. Okay, and now I need to delete this resource. So the way I can delete the resource is if I go to Overview, I'm going to go into the resource group. So now I'm in the resource group. I see all the resources that were created. Up here I have an option that says Delete Resource Group. I can click on that. As a safety, it's going to ask me, am I sure? In order to delete it, I have to enter the name of the resource group. So in this case, this was VNet1-RG1. Okay. We'll talk about this a little later, but basically whenever you delete a resource group, everything inside the resource group is going to be deleted. So I'm going to click delete here, and now it's gone through the process of deleting that resource group along with all of the resources that are inside of it. And that concludes this walkthrough.